We saw quite an emotional condolence to the police officers shot dead in the line of duty. A horrific atrocity in Queensland this week. The Prime Minister said today that he'd be open to looking at further ways that he could strengthen the country's world's best practice when it comes to gun laws, courtesy of John Howard after Port Arthur. What do you think we can, if anything, do to help prevent this sort of atrocity?
And look, I mean, I saw, the Prime Minister's comments, and I agree that we should, absolutely look at all options, but we should firstly understand, how did this happen? What were the circumstances, and what can we learn from the individual circumstances from this atrocity and other, gun crimes in Australia to say, are there rules that need to be tightened to prevent that? Because it is such an awful tragedy, and you see the young police officers, they are so young, they had such, they were so new on the job and just doing their best, and it is absolutely heartbreaking for them and their families, and also or the neighbour who was just doing the right thing.
It is heartbreaking. There's no other way to see the events of this week. Finally, on as we look to the new year, the Voice referendum is going to be a big event in the second half of next year. Do you think if the Prime Minister and the government were to provide more detail, that would be reassuring to voters who might be wavering on whether to support it or not?
Look, I think I think there is going to be more information and more sort of feedback on questions in the new year, and I know that there's been a very thoughtful consultation, with various groups and constitutional experts, so you get it right. But I think we need to learn also. We need to reflect on what the Constitution is. The Constitution is a document of principles. It's not a document of detail. And if we go down the saying, well, this version of the Voice in this Parliament will look like X, Y, and Z, you end up voting on a very narrow piece, which will be appropriate for a period of time, but is not actually what we're getting into the Constitution. So I think that we need to really focus on the principles of the Voice, the principles of this not being a veto on any action, but just being a voice on the policies that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And I know from my own experience in all sorts of services, if you listen to the people that, for the services that are meant to help them, if you actually listen to them, you'll get better outcomes. And I think this is what, my community wants, and I think, so much of the Australian community wants.
Member for Wentworth, Allegra Spender, appreciate your time today and throughout the year. We'll see you early next year. Thanks.
See you. Have a great break.